I never expected a peaceful weekend retreat at my secluded lake cabin to escalate into a high-stakes power struggle, until I heard the frantic pounding on the weathered door each slam, resonating like a taunt from authority itself. Under the pale glow of a single lantern, I peered through the frosted window to see Karen's bulky teenage son. His face twisted with panic and overconfidence, jiggling the lock as if entitlement could override the law. Moments before, I had been arranging paintings of my late grandfather's fishing trophies when the shrill ring of my phone shattered the silence. "Your cabin is in violation of HOA codes. Vacate immediately or we'll repossess," read a text from the association. My jaw clenched. I tapped a quick response. "I own every inch of this property under the corporate charter. Good luck with that." As I slipped on boots and approached the door, adrenaline surged. We were about to test whose power would prevail, the nepotistic reach of an overbearing HOA matriarch or the corporate might of her own employee. I flung the door open to face the boy's triumphant snarl. "Open up," he demanded, brandishing a printed notice with shaky bold letters. "My mom says you're trespassing on HOA land. Move out at once." I blocked his way with a calm so cold it rattled him. "Son," I said, my voice deceptively soft, "I'm your boss. You're standing on my property. Now step aside." He blinked, confusion colliding with anger, his palm hovering over the siren button on his phone as though dialing reinforcements would magically seal this cabin. This is official," he stammered. "Board policy." My smile was measured, until I saw the ancestor's antique rifle mounted on the wall behind him reflected in the glass pane. "Unofficial until it's signed and filed with the county recorder," I replied, pulling out the deed I'd personally registered days ago, complete with corporate annex and easement rights. "Go ahead. Call your mom. She'll have to answer to my corporate counsel." He hesitated, eyes darting over the fine print clause that rendered the HOA's lease null. His phone slipped from sweaty fingers. He looked up at me, seeking backup from justice. Already I could imagine the scene. Karen's blustering silhouette arriving at dawn, her demands echoing across the water, only to meet the steely gaze of her subordinate in a business suit tucked beneath her drafting table. But this night belonged to her son's misguided bravado. With a frustrated huff, he threw the notice at my feet and stormed off into the mist. As I closed the door, the echo of his footsteps mingled with the creak of ancient pines, and I realized that beneath his bluster lay vulnerability, a pawn in his mother's game. At sunrise I went to work, but not as one might expect. My commute took me past sprawling offices where I oversaw regional property development, a role I'd earned through years of strategy and negotiation. I sent a curt email to HR. "Terminate association privileges for minor misconduct effective immediately." They understood instantly. The cabin in question was not just a weekend hideaway, but a corporate retreat zoned under my direct oversight. Next, I filed a digital complaint with the county clerk detailing a pattern of HOA overreach, illegal notices, withheld records, and threats against property owners. Within hours, the HOA's online portal displayed a new entry: investigative audit initiated by county. Meanwhile, Karen's board members, already uneasy about their president's legal skirmishes, scrambled to find a scapegoat. Their committee chair blamed technical errors, the secretary blamed vendor miscommunication, but everyone knew the ultimate blame lay with Karen. I arrived at the cabin later that afternoon to find the dock ropes loosened, the rowboat drifting, and scuffed footprints leading toward the water's edge. Someone had come for more than intimidation. This was sabotage. I followed the trail to the shallow inlet and discovered Karen's son perched in the boat, paddling toward the horizon as if to claim the entire lake for his mother's dominion. I waded in, water lapping at my calves, and called out, "Drop the oar." He paused, twisting in the boat to face me, eyes wide with defiance. "My mom owns the lake rights," he shouted. "She can do whatever she wants." I stepped onto the boat's floorboards, tilting it. Water splashed over the edges. "Not when the lease expired last year and no one renewed it," I said, plucking the oar and tossing it to shore. He scrambled, arms flailing, and I steadied the craft. "Today you're on notice. No trespass, no harassment, no sabotage. Or I'll have you arrested for misdemeanor theft of private property." His chest rose and fell like a drumbeat of pent-up rage. Then a surprising voice cut through the taut air. "Lydia, the local wildlife officer and childhood friend who once saved the cabin from a fire started by stray fireworks. She appeared at the bank, uniform crisp, holding a stack of photographs, evidence of soil erosion from the HOA's illegal dredging of a nearby creek to expand private docks. This belonged to the HOA trustees' protected easement, she announced, handing me prints. They'll lose their permit if I submit this by tomorrow. The boy's eyes flicked between us. His power waning, he leapt out, splashing towpath mud onto his designer sneakers, and ran back to the boardwalk. In moments, that pristine shoreline would be under regulatory scrutiny. That twist his mother's empire unraveling not by corporate law, but by ecological protection punctured their sense of invincibility. That evening, I called a special hearing at the cabin itself, inviting every HOA member under the pretext of a lakeside governance symposium. Cameras from the local public access channel streamed the live event as I presented the deed, the audit notice, Lydia's photographs, and recorded statements from neighbors who'd endured water contamination and trespass. Karen stormed up the gravel path, her face flushed with fury, but her usual gavel felt useless in my hand, so I kept it raised, commanding attention. I paused by the wooden sign at the water's edge where, in bold scrawl, someone had chalked, "Respect the shore." Now I repurposed it. Equal rule for all. Her board members shifted uncomfortably as I outlined a path forward. Dissolution of her private docks, reinstatement of public easement, and a formal apology to every cabin owner. Karen tried to speak, but her words fell flat. Every clause I cited was backed by county codes and environmental law. When the motion passed unanimously, the gavel's rap echoed not her command, but communal consent. In the days that followed, the cabin welcomed everyone. Fishing derbies for underprivileged teens, a floating clinic for lakefront residents, and guided boat tours led by Lydia's wildlife team. Karen's son never returned. Rumor said he'd been assigned to a semester abroad, away from his mother's shadow. As for Karen herself, she issued a brief press release expressing regret for any misunderstanding, but made no effort to reclaim her former authority. Instead, she retreated from public life, choosing weekend volunteer duties at the county library, filing documents rather than drafting edicts. Under starlit skies, I often sat on the cabin porch, listening to the water lap and wondering if justice had been served or if entitlement would rise again like fog at dawn. Yet each time the breeze carried laughter and conversation across the lake, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Power wielded responsibly can transform conflict into community. Now I leave you with this question: did I simply protect my property, or did I redefine the very meaning of stewardship? Share your verdict, right or wrong. The morning after the lakeside hearing unfolded like a slow-motion sunrise. Soft, inevitable, unstoppable. Neighbors emerged from their cabins clutching mugs of coffee, stepping onto docks transformed overnight from barricades into bridges of possibility. Children meandered along the shore, collecting mussel shells and confiding hopes for next season's fishing tournament. Kayaks glided smoothly where once teenage tantrums had churned the water into angry swells. I paced the cabin porch, surveying the scene with a sense of wary triumph. Power is seductive, yet the sweetest victories are those shared rather than seized. Karen remained conspicuously absent, save for the occasional glance from the library windows where she had taken to cataloging historical parcels. In her retreat, I discerned a tale of introspection, maybe even remorse, her choosing the silent company of books over the clamorous escape hatch of headlines. But her absence did not close the chapter on accountability. The county clerk's audit continued its work, uncovering a web of unauthorized fines and misappropriated funds that would require her board's approval for restitution. Her son's misadventure in the rowboat, while a youthful folly, had ignited the spark that revealed the HOA's rot, its tendrils stretching far beyond lakefront cabins into street maintenance fees and even irrigation assessments for ranch lands. I convened a second forum that weekend, not as a spectacle, but as a celebration. A simple closing ceremony where deeds were amended in person, signatures joined in solidarity, and the wooden sign that had once read "Not on my watch" was repainted with bright strokes to read "Our lake, our home." Lydia organized a small band of volunteers to clear invasive reeds from the inlet, while I coordinated with the local historical society to document the cabin's legacy and preserve its artifacts. As the afternoon sun set the water ablaze in liquid gold, I gave a brief speech that drew both tears and laughter. Entitlement is a lonely throne. Community is the only kingdom worth ruling. The applause was genuine, not the forced clamor of an audience craving spectacle, but the respectful silence of neighbors moved by belonging. But as in any redemption arc, an unexpected encore awaited. Late in the evening, I found a leather-bound notebook on my doorstep, its pages yellowed, its cover embossed with the HOA's crest. Inside, Karen had written an apology, to me, to her son, to every member she had wronged. She documented her errors, her pride, and her newfound understanding that leadership is service, not sovereignty. She proposed a partnership, a rotating council to oversee lake governance, in which she sought a place not of authority but of contribution. It was her unspoken plea for forgiveness and a bid to redefine her legacy. Such humility is rare among those accustomed to command. I recognized it as genuine courage. When I presented the letter at the next community gathering, hushed reverence rippled through the crowd. Some leaned in to read her words. Others exchanged tears of relief, proof that change can start with a single admission of fault. Then Lydia stepped forward, lifting a mason jar of sand from the shoreline and pouring it into a communal bowl. This sand represents every footprint by these waters. We all leave marks, intentional or not. Let's shape our future from the clay of compassion. One by one, residents added handfuls, and we placed a plaque beside the bowl. Forgiven and forgiving. In that moment, the cabin's front porch felt less like private property, and more like a common sand emblem of shared history and collective hope. Word of our journey spread like ripples across a still lake. Journalists sought interviews, not with me alone but with the entire community. Scripts were drafted, documentaries edited, and soon a short film titled Not on My Watch, A Lake Reclaimed began circulating in environmental circles and governance forums alike. The film's closing shot lingered on the cabin at dawn, its silhouette framed by mist rising off the water, promising that the story was not an end but a perennial cycle of challenge and renewal. Months later, my corporate role included presenting at a national conference on community-driven conservation. I recounted the saga of Karen's son and the cabin takeover with candor and wit, emphasizing that power untempered by empathy is a liability. As I spoke, I saw hands raised across the auditorium, questions not about strategy, but about how to foster the same spirit of stewardship in their own towns. And somewhere in the crowd, I sensed Karen listening, perhaps searching for lines in my speech that echoed the humility she had finally embraced. Returning to the cabin, I found that someone had nailed a second wooden sign beside the first. In careful handwriting it read, "Together we thrive." Beneath it, Karen's signature. I touched the weathered wood and swore I could hear the lake's pulse, the heartbeat of a community reborn. So I leave you with this final thought. Justice is not a ledger of wrongs and rights but a living pact between people. When entitlement clashes with empathy, which will you side with? Right or wrong?